Eye of the Storm, featuring Monex and the world-renowned commodities research firm, the CPM Group, led by Jeffrey M. Christian.
Hello, my name is Sean Brazney, Sales Director for Monex Deposit Company. I get the great pleasure of being here again with Jeffrey Christian, Managing Partner and Founder of CPM Group, one of the many analysts over there at CPM Group. Thank you for being with us today, Jeffrey.
Sean, the pleasure's mutual, and it's great to be with you guys and with Monex.
You know, I heard some information recently, and you know, sometimes we get information from, you know, just the drinking fountain or you know, from our, you know, wherever we get it from, but sometimes it comes from people that we know and trust. And so I just love vetting some of this information out there because you're so great at all the data and the long history of compiling this data. Well, I heard something last week. Somebody called me up and told me about a mine down in Mexico, the Penasquito Mine. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly or not, but one of the largest producers of silver in the world. And I guess on June 8th, they had a labor dispute. They went into contract I guess the labor union wanted contract negotiations on profit sharing, and they ended up shutting down the mine, production in the mine. And then on June 23rd, the mine declared a force majeure on some metal contracts for delivery. And it brings up two different topics I wanted to ask you today. One is, does this really, since it's such a major producer, bring up the potential, a real potential for a shortage in silver coming to market? And second question would be, if you would help us kind of understand what a force majeure really is, because we hear it about, you know, investors talking about it happening at Brinks or at banks, or, you know, but this happened at a mine, and maybe you can help us really understand what a force majeure really is.
Talk about part one, and then part two, and then part one continued. The Penasquito mine is partly owned by Newmont, which is one of the larger gold mining companies in the world. Newmont is advised for third or fourth place as the one of the largest silver mining companies in the world. Penasquito is its silver mine. It's a polymetallic mine. It produces silver, gold, lead, and zinc. Produces around 30 million ounces of silver a year. So let's say 2.5 million ounces a month. So its loss in a market where you've got 750 million ounces of silver mine production every year it's significant, but it's not devastating or catastrophic to the market. You know, there's a lot of silver out there. And as I said, you know, I think Penasquito is about 30 million ounces, and it accounts for most of Newmont's silver production. And it has a Newmont, you know, which is a very large gold mining company, has byproduct silver at some of its gold mines, and it has some byproduct gold at this mine, a few 100,000 ounces a year. The strike and force majeure at Penasquito probably is not anything that's going to disrupt the market. And if you look at the last 40 days while the mine has been on strike, what you see is, you know, COMEX inventories are about the same. London inventories are about the same. There's 850 million ounces or so in London. There's about, I think, about 275 million ounces in New York, most of which is eligible but not registered with the COMEX. So there's a lot of silver lying around to compensate for it. There may be some tightnesses in the market because there'll be companies that say, well, I've contracted to buy that silver from Newmont, and now I have to go into the market and find 2.5 million ounces a month elsewhere. So there'll be some tightness and some congestion, but you know, you haven't really seen a major impact on the price, and you probably won't. Now, I'll come back to that after it, but let's talk about force majeure. Force majeure basically means, you know, an act of God. And most contracts have force majeure clauses in them. And the International Swap Dealers Association and agreement under which most commodities trade have about 5 different places where you can say, oh, something's happened and I contractually can't deliver. But that doesn't mean that we should say that this contract is in default. So this is an act of God in the eyes of Newmont Mining. In the eyes of the strikers, it's an act of Newmont Mining management. It's a dispute. And so they've declared force majeure on their deliveries, saying, because of this strike, we simply cannot deliver our materials until the strike's resolved. And force majeure is a standard contract clause. CPM Group even uses it in some of our contracts where we say we'll do a study for somebody, and if we can't deliver certain parts of it, we can declare force majeure. It's just not doable to come up with some kinds of information. People will talk about, oh yes, there's going, the COMEX is going to have to declare force majeure, although it never has on any contract, or a bank will have to declare force majeure. That has happened in the 80s and maybe in the 90s a couple times in precious metals markets. It doesn't happen very often. Oftentimes when you do see somebody who has a delivery problem, they can do a deal with somebody else and say, I owe these people 2.5 million ounces of silver a month. I'd like to lease it from you. You deliver it to my customer, and then when I'm fixed, I will repay you and close out that lease. And you have, in fact, seen some 3 million ounce transactions going on in the over-the-counter market, which may represent Newmont going off to third parties saying, I need to find metal to meet my contractual commitments, given the fact that this is a strike. So force majeure is not nearly as scary or as devastating as some people would have you believe. It can be, but it all depends on what it is that's being declared force majeure. So that's where it is. Now, going back to the silver market, 30 million ounces, significant part of production if you see the strike continue. Given the nature of the strike, the dispute actually reflects Newmont has reached an agreement in May with its workers to give them profit participation on the mine. And they gave them profit participation, which was equal to about 13 months of wages per worker. And the union has said, that's interesting, but we don't quite understand the calculations you've made. And we'd like you to better explain those calculations. And Newmont has declined to do that. So the nature of the strike is relatively mechanical, and we would expect it to be resolved sometime soon. It's not a big deal for a strike. And Newmont has said, look, there are ways in our contracts with the union and the workers to negotiate this and resolve this. The courts have said the strike's legal. So it's continuing, but it probably will end soon. That strike in and of itself probably doesn't cause major problems for the silver market. But Mexico is the largest silver producing country by far. It produces about 260 million ounces of silver. The next largest producer is China, which is probably about 140 million ounces. So Mexico is a major silver producer. And Mexico, the government has been changing the rules and regulations for foreign mining companies and the taxation and other fees that it wants to impose on mining and profit sharing. And you have a more militant union posture. So there are a lot of issues bubbling around in the Mexican mining industry, which is very important to the silver market. And collectively, those problems could cause some constraints on supply over the next period of time. It might be, over the next several months or the next couple of years, because there is a more militant posture toward foreign mining companies and their operations in Mexico. So that is something worth paying attention to. It's not something to worry about that it's going to happen overnight, but it's just one of those many things that says, hey, the world's a lot more treacherous than it used to be.
Definitely a topic worth paying attention to. And I want to remind our viewers that these amazing reports we get through CPM also demand some paying attention to, like the 2023 Precious Metals in the Eye of the Storm, when you can call Monex today, talk to an account representative, and get your free report. Thank you for your time, Jeffrey, today.